Thank you, guys, and I pray that you are well today and will learn. Brandy said it best. These are not happy, clappy messages. They're sobering and they're serious. And I think that we have to accept the fact that this stuff has to happen. The Scripture wrote it, and we don't get to choose what generation it comes upon. It's going to happen. And so I want you to turn in your Bibles this morning to Revelation chapter 13, because I'm going to be there at some part. And I want to go ahead and make a blanket statement so that hopefully I won't scare you this morning, because it's not my intention to scare you. It is not my intention to petrify you. It's not my intention to worry you. My intention is to inform you. I have all summer to teach. I told you it's going to be the summer of prophecy according to plan. So I got a long way to go. There are things that I'm going to share with you. The first thing I want to share with you this morning, because I didn't at 8 o'clock and I could see the panic. So I'm going to try to eliminate the panic. Whether you want to say at the end of Revelation 3 or the beginning of Revelation 4, that is where the rapture takes place. That's when I'm leaving. Y'all can stay if you want. I'm out. I'm going to talk about the rapture. I'm going to tell you who's going. I'm going to tell you how it's going to happen. I can't tell you when. I'm going to show you what Scripture teaches about it. Why we're not going through. Now, I will tell you, there are plenty of people that will tell you that you're going to go halfway through. Some are going to tell you you're going to go all the way through. Some are going to tell you it's already happened. Some are going to tell you it's never going to happen. I'm here to tell you that it's going to happen. The Scripture teaches it's going to happen. I'm leaving. Whoever's saved is leaving. If you're not saved, I recommend you get saved now so that you can go with us. That's Revelation, in between Revelation 3, Revelation 4. That means when I'm talking to you from Revelation 13, we're not here. Okay? We're out. So don't panic. But I also think that you need to be aware of the beginnings of something that we are here for, and to think about this. So last week I taught you from Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 2, chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9, as I briefed it, that Daniel had an interpretation of a dream for King Nebuchadnezzar, and then he had a revelation of a vision from God in Revelation chapter 7. He is speaking about the rise of 4 different nations. The vision in chapter 2, chapter 7, and chapter 8 are all the same 4 nations, but with extended explanation the further that he goes. We understood that God has chosen to use nations, and listen carefully to me, nations. That's obvious. So when the Bible says, I saw a beast coming up out of the ocean, he's not talking about a person. He's talking about a nation. Okay? Stay with the terminology that's being used. He's talking about a nation. We have seen all 4 nations arise. The Babylonian nation under King Nebuchadnezzar. The Medo-Persian kingdom, Cyrus and Darius. The Grecian nation or kingdom, Alexander the Great. And the Roman kingdom that came up under the Caesars. And there were a number of Caesars, whether it was the ones you know, Julius, Augustus, Caligula, those people that came through. One of the most famous is Constantine. And so those nations came up. But what God showed us in here was that as Daniel shared this vision, he shared a head of gold, shoulder and arms of silver, chest of brass, legs of iron, and then 2 feet with 10 toes that were made of iron, potter's clay, and ceramic clay. So these feet with the 10 toes of iron, potter's clay, and ceramic clay have yet to be seen. All of the previous kingdoms have been seen exactly as Daniel prophesied. So I have great confidence that as the Bible predicted they were coming, and then they did, and they showed up exactly as Daniel prophesied, and they did, I am just as confident that this second revival of the Roman kingdom that he's prophesied in the toes and the feet is coming just as surely as the others came. The question for us this morning, as I shared all this stuff last week, is it's no good to just share it with you and say, well, there's what Daniel said. Is it associated with us at all? Is there anything that we could look at in our current time and say, you know what, I think maybe in this age it might be happening? Is there anything that says that? Now let me give a disclaimer. I don't know when the Lord's coming back. Is this the rise of the fourth kingdom? I think it is, but I can't guarantee that it is. I'm not God. Fair? Is that fair? What I want to show you is there's good reason to think that it is. If we just look in our history, especially as you look backwards into the history of the world and say, has there ever been a time in history that this could have been other than now? And I don't see anything in the history backing up about, if we back up maybe 50 years and back, I don't see anything there that would have ever had to happen. You also need to understand that there is not a singular event that marks this, but it is a rise. It is a growing. It's a little piece here and a little piece there and a little piece here and a little piece there. So we have to ask ourselves, is there anything that tells us that there might be the possibility that this is happening right now? There's two truths that I want to deal with today, just two things. Number one, I want to talk about the possible formation of this fourth kingdom. And secondly, I want to talk about what the power of the fourth kingdom will be that could cause this to actually happen, and then show you some things going on in our life and in our world and our situation right now that I think correspond to what's going on here, that gives me reason to believe that we are really, really, really close to the end. And as I work my way through the summer, I want to talk about, well, what does that mean to us if we are? You get to make your own decisions. You don't have to believe a single thing that I say, but I do want to give you some things to think about, okay? Number one, let's talk about the possible formation of this fourth kingdom. Is it happening right now? I want to go back to Daniel. We'll get to Revelation 13 in a minute. We're going to go back to Daniel, and we're going to look at what Daniel said so that we can look forward in the future and see, does anything measure up? The first thing that Daniel says is that this kingdom will be unlike any other kingdom. That's the first thing that he says. In verse 7 of Daniel 7, he says this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. We already know that that was the Roman kingdom. It was devouring and breaking into pieces. We know that's exactly what Rome did. And it was trampling the residue with its feet. That phrase right there is pretty important because it's now moving and it's talking about the feet and the toes and how whatever was left over, it's trampling the residue. And it says it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. We already understand that he was saying that there's something about this particular kingdom that is going to form up that is unlike anything that came before it, and there is 10 leaders that are over top of that. You can see that in chapter 7, you can see that in chapter 8, you can see that in Revelation chapter 13, just from the terminologies that are there. So there's 10 leaders over there. We have to ask ourselves this question. Has there ever been do we have something right now in play, a nation or a kingdom in play right now that might represent something that formed up differently than anything previous? And I would say yes, and I'll show you what it is in just a second. Number two, though, not only will it be different, it will be a mixture of nations. Daniel chapter 2, verses 41 through 43 says this, whereas you saw the feet and the toes, they were partly of potter's clay. That means that you have a leader or a kingdom or a country or a nation that is not fixed. It's moldable. You can make it do certain things. It's not hard. You can mash it, stretch it, change it, or something like that. Part of this kingdom is going to be potter's clay. He says, and it's partly iron. That's the old Roman government that is fixed. It is the way that it is. It don't change. It says, and the kingdom shall be divided, not meaning that it's against each other. It means that it's not united. It is not They don't have the same beliefs. They don't have the same thoughts. They're going to be united under a singular thought or a singular idea, but they're still very diverse in all that they are. It would be much like thinking about the denominations of the Christian faith. All the denominations would say we believe in Jesus, but whenever you get down to our in particular beliefs, you'll notice that we don't actually mingle much with one another by virtue of our denomination, because apparently our denomination is stronger than our God. And that's kind of sad. But that's how we see it. And so he says they're divided, and yet, even though they're divided, the strength of iron is going to be in it. So there's going to be some connection, some collaboration that's going to make these countries strong. He says, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. Ceramic clay is different. It's been hardened. It's not moldable. It is the way that it is, but it's easily broken. It's easily crushed. So he identifies that. And he says, as the toes and the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong, partly fragile. Meaning that there's military sides and there's non-military sides. And he says, as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. So it's going to be a loose coalition. 4 quick things I'm just going to label. All these notes are online. You can pick them up. So number 1, it's going to include the old Roman Empire. That's the iron. It will include the old Roman Empire. Number 2, it's going to include the nations beyond the Roman Empire. That's the moldable clay, and that's the ceramic clay. Those are not parts of the old Roman Empire, but they're going to be a part of it. Number 3, it's going to include military nations and non-military nations. Some of the nations are going to be really, really strong and have military. Some of the nations are going to be really, really weak and have no military whatsoever. They have to borrow their military from somebody else. They have to borrow it, so they don't have any. And number 4, it's going to be a very loose coalition of nations. So that means that they're just not really, really completely locked together. Now, here's the question. Knowing that this is what Daniel says, is there anything like this in the world right now? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to take a look at the old Roman Empire so that we can understand, well, what is the old Roman Empire? What was the coalition of the old Roman Empire? So we put this slide on the board, and I want to show you what the old Roman Empire looks like, and you'll realize that Rome was the most powerful nation to date that has ever existed, because at that time, for pretty much the known world, it ruled most of the known world. Not all of it, but most of it. And so you can see these variety of nations. All the colored pieces up there are parts of the old Roman Empire. If you look at Italia, which is Italy, you can kind of see where that's a recognizable part of the map. Most of us know what the boot is, okay? The boot is where Rome is, kind of down closer at the bottom is where Rome sits, Rome, Italy. And Rome's seat of power was from right there, but you can see how far that seat of power went, where Rome just conquered pretty much the whole old Roman Empire. And by the way, they did it differently than everybody else. If you go back in history, you'll recognize that when a nation went and had a conquest, they basically went and conquered all these people. They enslaved the people. They uprooted them from their homeland, brought them back to their land, made them slaves in their land, but they had to feed them, they had to house them, they had to administrate them, and inevitably, every nation that had done that, it became their demise. Not because of the peoples of their country, but because of the slavery of the people they brought in. It always cost so much that they couldn't sustain it. And so they collapsed. Rome was the first nation to do it differently. Rome started what is known as colonization. Today, Great Britain colonized, the United States colonizes. It is one of the things that we fight against like crazy. I will tell you this, God's plan for the church of Jesus Christ is to colonize. What is colonization? You don't uproot people. You don't take their jobs. You don't take their families. You don't take their life. You don't take their lifestyle. You insert a new government. You insert a new culture, and they live under that. That's what Rome did. So Rome sent in people to oust the governments that were in the area, to implant their government and implant their culture. We have so much to owe Rome. If you go into Palestine, they'll take you and they will talk to you about Roman roads, Roman aqueducts, Roman bathhouses, Roman theaters, Roman colosseums. It was the way Rome inserted their culture into all these different places. We owe it to Rome for the expansion of the world because they made roadways where you could travel. They made water that got to everywhere. They put hygiene in everywhere. They elevated the living of people through their colonization while simultaneously enslaving the people that were there. But as a result of them not having to bring them back to Rome, Italy, which obviously the whole world couldn't fit, look at what they built. They built an entire place. There was a Caesar that was in Rome, and then there were governors and procurators that went out through the rest of the place, which is why you see in the biblical days that we had Pontius Pilate and we had King Herod. These were people that were sitting in seats of the Roman government to rule over these areas. They're the first ones that ever did it this way. It's important to see what the old Roman Empire was because, according to Daniel, the 10 feet, or the 2 toes with the 2 feet with the 10 toes, is the revival of the old Roman government with the addition of some partly potter's clay and partly ceramic clay. So let me show you a second picture. The second picture is of what has come to happen in our lifetime, known as the European Union. And the European Union is the uniting of a variety of nations together under one head, which is called the European Union. You can see, it might be a little bit more difficult to see because, you got an old map and you got a new map, but if you really take a look at it, you can see the old Roman Empire is fully inside of the European Union, but there's also other countries that are in the European Union that are not part of the old Roman Empire, exactly as Daniel prophesied. And exactly as Revelation 13 prophesies is what was going to happen, that we have the addition of these things that are out there. So when you take a look at what's going on here, you can see the boot and you can see how far it went around over there. And so you got all these places up here. Sweden and Finland are 2 recent advocates to the European Union. They're even working right now in the United Nations trying to get them seated in. So there's a lot of stuff happening in our nation right now. Now here's what's important to understand. Let me just go back. I'm going to give you 2, because I want to give you familiar stuff so you ain't got to think too hard. There are 2 people in our history that attempted to conquer Europe and to unite Europe under one head. There's been more than that, but I'm going to give you the 2 most familiar names, Napoleon Bonaparte and Adolf Hitler. They were in massive wars with massive loss of life, and neither one of them was successful. Neither one. However, interestingly enough, the United European Union came to power on February 7th of 1992 without a single shot fired, without a bomb, without a plane, without a helicopter, without a pistol, without a rifle, without a threat. These countries that have always been divided decided to just come together. They realized that if they were going to survive in the world, they would have to come together. This has never happened in the history of the world. That is the European Union is the most miraculous union that has ever happened in the history of the world. For us, we never even knew. It's just some nations coming together. Oh, no. It's not just some nations coming together. It is an amazing unification of some nations. They've unified and become so powerful that they got rid of. You remember whenever you could buy and sell with a franc or a mark or a pound or a sterling, they said, you know what, that's never going to work. So they came up with a single currency called the euro. Like that. It's a powerful, powerful currency. It's stronger than the dollar. That all of these countries decided that they were going to do that. All of these countries decided to join hands with each other. Now you can travel back and forth. We know that last year it was made final that the United Kingdom came out. Under Brexit, they came out. And there's reasons that they came out. But it's important to understand how this all came together. Now here's the question. What is the European Union? What is that? Is it just some countries that came together? Because it started out with Great Britain, France, and Germany, but then there were others that kind of came in. Well, what was it really about? Well, when they first started in 1992 to start moving this forward, they put out posters to get people to join, to get countries to join, to get them to understand what it was that they were trying to do. And you can look all this up on the internet. It's not hard. But they put out, so I want to show you one of their posters. First of all, I want to show you a picture of a picture of the Tower of Babel. In the 16th century, which was in the 1500s, if you understand that very well, there was a poster that was put out, and this poster was put out by a Flemish artist named Peter Bruegel. And in reading the scripture, and he was thinking about the Tower of Babel, he painted his rendering of what he thought the Tower of Babel would look like. It is obviously, if you look at the Tower of Babel, you can see that it's partly built and that it's partly not built, that there's pieces that are left off and it's unfinished. I want you to especially look down here in this corner. You'll see these people down here in this corner over here that are kings and stuff that's going on. There are people that are worshiping down there, and it's partly built. There's stones that are going, and so obviously there's worship going on. It's unfinished up here at the top, so you kind of get an idea of what the Tower of Babel looks like. Notice that there's nothing in the sky but clouds. There's nothing there but clouds. Let me show you the poster, the recruitment poster for the European Union. They adopted the Tower of Babel, but they added some things to it. You'll notice a modern-day crane derrick that is up there at the top, which signifies they're continuing to build what was left off by Nimrod in the book of Genesis. That they are continuing the building of the Tower of Babel. That is their desire. You'll notice that the people are no longer people, but they are block-headed people with block-headed arms. In other words, they're robotic, symbolizing that there's going to be a leadership in this tower and that the people around are simply going to be robots. They're going to do what they're told. They're not going to have an ideology of their own. They're going to do that. And so it becomes pretty obvious from this poster. And then they have their motto there, which is many tongues, one voice. In other words, what they're saying is, just like in the Tower of Babel, because God said because they had one language, because they had one voice, nothing would be withheld from them that they had desire to do. So God says, I'm going to confound their languages so they cannot any longer continue doing what they're doing. And so their motto is, just like at the Tower of Babel, we want you to know that we plan on taking over the world, and the way that we're going to do it is by having a single voice. That single voice is going to come through a single union. That single union is going to come through some very united things. Politically, police-wise, warring-wise, and monetarily-wise, we are going to have one single voice. We're going to build it, and you guys are going to follow. That's their poster. I also want you to notice what's in the sky. That is an upside-down pentagram, which demonstrates who it is that they're worshiping. And the Bible tells us in Revelation 13 that this particular nation gets its power from the evil one. And so they have these ideologies. If you go and look on the internet, and you'll see how they've moved beyond this poster and gone a little further, and they'll say we can all serve under the same star, and you'll recognize that the star that they make on the internet, you'll see every religious symbol that's in there, because they all, like some of us, if you're riding down the road, you can see some of these posters that got all these different symbols for religion on there. And what does it say? Coexist. Can I tell you that God's not a coexistent God? He tells you who he's putting out of his town and his city. And it's all in there. It's how it started. It's how it's going to finish. This is what's going to happen. Now, so this was their poster. In Strasbourg, France, they went about building the building that houses the administration of the European Union. It is a model of the Tower of Babel. That is not accidental, by the way. So what we have to ask ourselves is, given what the Bible writes, given what the Bible says, given what the Bible tells us, is there anything in our current day that would lend us to believe that there is something possibly that's going on? You decide. You decide what you think. What's going? Hey, we can get their motto, many times one voice. Do y'all know what the motto of the United States of America is? Does anybody know? The motto. It used to be e pluribus unum. Out of many, one. That's not our motto today. You know what our motto is today? Because it got changed. I don't know if y'all knew that or not. It got changed. None of y'all know. In God we trust. That's our motto. That's the motto of the United States of America. In God we trust. It's not going to be motto long, but that's what it is today. If you'll notice, even e pluribus unum, where we're like, we have a bunch of us, but we've turned into one. The European Union is, we're going to continue to have a bunch of varieties, but we're going to only have a singular voice. Very, very different. Very different. Diversity is its motto. Now you're seeing, even as it's eking into America, that our motto is starting to become diversity. We are now adopting this same motto, diversity. God never authorized diversity. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one people, one God and Father of all. God never authorized diversity. It was unity. But we've bought diversity because this is getting shoved among us today. And ignorantly so do we embrace this diversity. Oh, we got to be diverse. We got to be diverse. We got to be diverse. No, we need to be united. But we haven't figured out how to do that yet. So we're very vulnerable in the church. I want you to see that there's at least the potential that there's something out there that is real. Next, its rule is going to be complete over all of the nations and all the peoples of the world. In Revelation chapter 13, I want to read two verses, verse 1 and verse 7. Why did I skip verses 2 through 6? Because there's a lot of filler information there that I want to deal with right now. I just want to show you something about what the Bible talks about in terms of what's going to happen whenever these 10 toes start ruling. When the leadership starts ruling, it says this. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea. When he talks about the sea, he's not talking about the ocean. He's talking about the sea of people. So it's rising up out of humankind, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Why 7 heads and 10 horns? 10 horns are kings. 7 heads are the ones going to lead it. The Antichrist is going to come and wipe out 3. There will be 7 left. It says, and on his horns were 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. And it was granted to them to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Oh, that's a challenge. This nation is going to make war with the saints, and it's going to overcome the saints. So it's going to be a hard time. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. So this is going to be a one world rule for sure. There's no question about it. You're going to control everything. Now here's the question. How? How can this happen? How could it be? How could it ever happen that we'd be in control? Well, first of all, I'd like to ask you this question. How could it be that the United States of America, after all we've gone through, would allow our sitting president to cede away our sovereignty to the WHO? That's the right question to ask. There are 13 amendments in front of the WHO right now that are giving away the sovereignty of this nation while we sit back and are worried about the price of gas. And it's happening in our day. It's happening right now. And they've got to get it done by tomorrow. Just a thought. Number 2, what is the controlling power of the fourth kingdom? Very easily, economics. That's the controlling power. The first thing the kingdom will do is to take over the world's monetary system. To do that, it's got to do a couple of things. It's got to make sure that there is no currency available but one. No form of exchange. We got to get rid of the cash. We got to get rid of the coin. Because if you have a means of exchange, you can circumvent the system. This is going to be a total control system, which means you cannot circumvent it. It's important to understand that. Right now, they're getting rid of the coins. Have you noticed? They're also getting rid of the cash. We think, oh, you old people, you still use cash. Don't you have Venmo? Don't you have a Cash App? Oh, they have sucked you in. They have sucked you in. Yeah, it's a great way to work. It's a great way to operate. You just don't understand what's happening. You want to know why? I told you last week. There's a narrative that God has. There's a narrative that the world has. Which one are you following? You got to think about it. Listen to what Revelation 13, verses 16 and 17 says. One of the things that this ruler is going to be able to do, he said, he causes all. And then he identifies who all is. Small and great. Rich and poor. Free and slave. To receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads. Either one, could be in one of these places. That no one, all inclusive, no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. So it's either the mark, the name, or the number of the name. If you don't have any one of those three things, you have no ability to have any form of exchange, no currency. There's going to be one currency that's going to be there. And that's how the Antichrist, that's how the power of this nation is the power to establish economics. Think about our own country right now and how much we're struggling through the price of gasoline and how it's affecting not only gas, but then, we truck everything, so it's going to affect the price of groceries. It's going to affect the price of everything. Look at the price of cars. Look at all that's going on right now. So economically is the way that you do it. I don't know if you know this or not, but governments have the ability to dictate what is the interest rate, what is inflation, what is not inflation. Can we go into depression? They can do that by simply making decisions. Whoever makes the decisions on cash, on economics, is the one that controls the nation. Any entity inside of a nation that has the ability to create cash, print cash, and distribute cash will ultimately control the nation regardless of who its political leaders are. The United States Treasury and the IRS control you more than Biden ever thought about controlling you, or Congress, or the Senate. It's whoever controls the cash. It's that way around the world right now. It always has been. It always will be. So then the question we have to ask is there a possibility of this scenario? And I realize I got about 10 minutes. Bear with me. I'm going to go through this kind of fast, but I want you to follow me, okay? I want to show you how this is happening in our day right now and how it's going to continue to happen, what you need to keep your eyes on, okay? I got to do a little history because it's not one singular event. It's happened through history. In 1944, after World War II, after the defeat of Germany, we had a situation that arose in our country. It was a world war. Because it was a world war, it was fought pretty much over on the European continent and a few little places around us. We remember Hawaii and Pearl Harbor. We remember those things. As a result, in that days of war, we didn't have smart bombs. We didn't have laser beams. We had bombs you dropped out of airplanes and tanks and stuff like that. And when we went to war, we destroyed a nation. We destroyed its infrastructure. We destroyed its telecommunications. We destroyed its plumbing. We destroyed its electrical. We destroyed everything. So whenever a country was coming back, they were completely debilitated, and there was no hope for them coming back. After the war was over, there was a need to reconstruct the world and reconstruct these various countries. In order for that to happen, someone had to finance that reconstruction. With the United States of America still being the most powerful nation on planet Earth, we chose to finance the reconstruction of the world. In order to do that and for other countries to trust us and believe in us, there needed to be a single reserve currency in this world, and we chose the U.S. dollar to be the single reserve currency for which the whole world would be rebuilt. In order to put trust in that U.S. dollar, there was a time previous to 1944 that an individual could own gold. Go back and check in your history, and you'll discover that gold had to be confiscated from the general population, from the general public, because it was now going to become the backing for the U.S. dollar on a global scale so that we could give cash to other countries to rebuild their country while giving a promissory note backed by the gold reserves. We promised other countries that if they used our dollars and our loans to rebuild their country, it would be backed by gold, and if they ever wanted to, they could buy back their gold with our U.S. dollars. That caused the United States of America to become not only a powerful economic nation, but the most powerful economic nation on planet Earth. There was a point in time where America held over 75% of the world's gold reserves. As a result of that, with some very responsible presidents and very responsible people, we loaned out money. We kept money pretty even in terms of how much gold we had and how much cash was out. We published an index called the M3. The M3 is a monetary index that tells you how much money is out in the world of all different denominations, but it also marked how much cash was out in the world from the United States of America, how much U.S. dollar cash was out there in reference to our United States gold supply. People could go online and say, America's strong, America's strong, America's strong, America's strong. As the countries rebuilt and started their own economies rolling again and started selling, and you hear this in the news all the time, our previous president was very concerned about the trade deficit. A trade deficit is we buy more from other countries than they buy from us, and it puts us in a negative situation. And there was a concern to get that trade deficit in balance for the future of the United States of America. Ignorant Americans that know nothing about economics had a problem with that. That's because you're ignorant. We were a little out of balance. Countries started their economies growing, and guess what? They wanted their gold back. So there became some irresponsible presidents that came into play, and they started printing more cash than they were supposed to print. Created inflation. About the time we were printing up all this cash, because we didn't think it was ever going to change, these other countries started to go strong. They were turning their cash in for gold. We started looking, oops, we have more cash out than we have gold to sell back. What do? Richard Nixon signed into law that we came off the gold standard because we didn't have enough gold to pay it all back. So we told those countries, I'm just being honest, we reneged on our promise. Here's what we told them. You can rest not only in your gold, you can rest on the reputation of the United States of America. And so they're promissory notes now. They're not backed by anything. Time goes on, we realize that the paper is not worth anything. We're printing too much cash. Inflation is going crazy, so we had to do something. We have an ally. That ally is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the number one oil-producing nation in the OPEC nations. They're the number one member of the OPEC nations, and they control the oil supply basically over the world because they're one of our major, I don't know if you ever noticed how good we treat the Saudis. Like the Saudis are never in trouble with us. I wonder why. Let me tell you why. I'll tell you why. The Saudis made an agreement with the United States of America that they would only ever, as the head of the OPEC nations, they would make sure this happened around the entire globe. They would make sure that oil could only ever be bought with a U.S. dollar. You cannot buy oil in the world with anything but a United States dollar. It became known as the petrodollar. Now, there's no such thing as a petrodollar. That's a nickname they gave to the dollar because our dollars are petrodollars. They're no longer backed by gold. They're backed by oil. Recently now, individuals can once again own gold because we went off the gold standard. That's why you can now buy gold. It hasn't always been that way. So our nation is backed by the petrodollar, the fact that every nation in the world that needs oil, which is every nation in the world, must buy U.S. dollars to purchase their oil with. Keeps the U.S. dollar strong. The United States of America has never been in war for oil. We got plenty of oil. But we've been in a lot of wars for how the world buys oil. Nearly every war since World War II that we have fought, almost, not all of them, but almost every one we have fought and the ones we are currently fighting are about how the world pays for oil with the U.S. dollar. Iran, which is a nation that hates us, decided we want to do something about that. We want to weaken the United States of America, so they opened up what is known as the IOB, the Iranian Oil Bourse, B-O-U-R-S-C. It's an exchange. Think New York Stock Exchange, a place I can go to and buy, trade and exchange stocks and bonds. Iran started the IOB, which is the Iranian Oil Bourse, which was to say, we're setting up an exchange that allows us to sell oil for something other than a U.S. dollar because we hate the United States. They set it up, they tried to get it going. Somehow, it didn't get to go very well. I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but interestingly enough, there were several wars that happened during that time, where we started blowing them up, and we were bombing them, we were shooting them, we were in all kinds of conflict with them, and we've been able to mitigate this until finally, just a couple of years ago, they shut it down. Let's go back to the European Union. The European Union is the euro, the single currency that they have, the euro, is the first and only currency in the world that has ever challenged the U.S. dollar. The IOB was putting in place the ability to buy oil with a euro. If that ever happens, it will devalue the dollar so quickly, because all of the nations that hate us around the world, if they can buy their oil with something other than a U.S. dollar and quit making us strong, they will do it. I promise. They will do it. As soon as you realize that the dollar is starting to lose, these nations will dump their dollars as fast as they can dump them, and they'll buy up euros as fast as they can buy them, if that happens to be the currency they're going to use. I don't think that the euro is going to be the final currency of the world. It's going to be an electronic currency of some sort. Bitcoin and things like that are on the rise that will avail itself to an electronic currency that has nothing to do with paper, coin, or anything. It's going to be a single currency that's out there. However, the day is coming, because it's already been tried, but it's going to be tried by others. And more than likely, the European Union is going to afford the opportunity, because it will cause them to become massively wealthy and America to go gone. When the currency exchange happens, that's the power. That's the power of this fourth kingdom. It's upon us right now. Let me give you a number. 2005. Go look it up. 2005. I'm going to give you a round figure. The national debt for the United States of America was just over $850 billion. 2005. $850 billion. And we were in trouble. Today, $30.5 trillion in debt. The United States has the ability to print cash every day because it's backed by oil. We can print as much cash as we want to. As fast as they can run those presses, they can just print cash out of thin air. Here's the problem. It'll have no value. This is what aggravates me about this new generation. Y'all need to pay for my school. Y'all need to pay for my insurance. Y'all need to pay for my health care. I don't ever need to pay for anything. Oh, we can print the cash, folks. You have no idea what you're doing to your future. You have no idea what you're doing to your future because you think you're entitled and you have no idea what is going on right now. The only hope that you have is to be debt-free. You better learn to become debt-free. Because when the dollar's worth nothing, the only thing you're going to hang on to is what you currently own. And it's coming. It's coming more quickly than you know. It's happening right now. President Biden, I don't care where you politically stand, this is true. President Biden is selling away the sovereignty of the United States of America, and some of y'all are so politically stupid that you can't see it, and you won't do anything about it. We're selling away our future. We're selling it away. As we started trading with China and Russia all over again, we're back in a deficit situation. It's going to put us in an inflation situation. They're running the cash presses as fast as they can run them. Inflation is soaring. Gas prices are going because it's happening right now. Right now. Hey, but I'm out of here. I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be gone. If y'all don't want to stay here, you better get saved. That's all I'm going to tell you.